Hello, my name is Sarah Zedek. My pronouns are she, her, and this is a BreadTube apology video. So it's January of 2023 now, and here I am surveying the field of all of the things that I have to say. And I'm asking myself, who cares? Who gives a shit? Who cares what I think? Sink? Sink. Why aren't we talking about Sink Dog? I'm going to go out on a limb and say that 2022 was a bit of a bad year, bit of a shit year, bit of a drag, kind of terrible. I mean, I guess for me personally, it wasn't as bad as 2021, but that's really just because I wasn't homeless at any point in 2022. I wound up in this place eventually, which is nice here in Seattle, and it's pretty cool. It's pretty chill, but it was a long application process to get in, and we were homeless for about a month. We had to live in a friend's place in Texas for a while to do that, so that wasn't necessarily great about 2021. I had a fun, actually, we're coming up on the anniversary. I had a fun week where my cat, Ruthie, died, and then my granddad died, and then my clinic, my mental health clinic, the Seattle Counseling Center, oldest LGBT centered mental health clinic in the nation, closed. All in the same week. All three of those things happened in one week. SCS was closed because it was a nonprofit that wasn't able to turn a profit. That's how they get you. Funny story about that, actually. The board of directors for SES, shortly, I think either after or shortly before they announced, oops, we're going to close because, ha ha, hoo hoo, we didn't do anything to give money or raise attention to the fact that we were going bankrupt this entire time. They took all the board of directors off of the SES website, but of course it's still on archive.org. So you can find who the board of directors were. And I think it's very funny that so many of them are like, financial tech wizards who have like PhDs in money making, and they have many dollar signs in their job titles. I didn't search on every single one of them because I knew this path down this path lay madness, but I did find one of them on Twitter, and former board of directors of SCS who was bragging about how much money they were making in crypto exchanges, and how much money they were making on the stock market. So I applied, wow, that's great. Why couldn't you keep SCS afloat? And they blocked me. So anyway, 2021 was a pretty shit year, but 2022 was bad for a whole other series of reasons. Wait, the cat, yeah, 2022 was bad, yeah, because, yeah, that's when Ruthie, my granddad, and then SCS all died all at once. I actually have, up here, this is one of Ruthie's paw prints. Yeah, cool year, cool year. This is actually up here. You can't see it, obviously, but this is where I keep the things that remind me of people who have died in my life. This is one of my mom's wickless wonders. She made this in probably 2006, maybe 2005. She died in 2008. Yeah, she made this just out of candles, just dripping them into pie tin lids and burning off the edges. These are my dad's glasses, very thick. My dad was a construction worker, actually. He had these glasses my entire life. I think he's had this one pair of glasses since the 90s. He died in 2016. Part of the reason why he had such thick glasses was that one time on a job, he saw people were arc welding on a level up above him, and he walked under and then made the mistake of looking up, and like metal shavings fell on his eyes. 2022. What else happened in 2022? We weren't homeless. We stayed in this house, and we are reasonably sure we're going to be staying here for a good little while. And that's nice. It's nice to feel like we're in a place where we might stick around. Not a particularly common amenity in today's world. Not many people live in the same place for more than a couple of years. I haven't lived in the same building or the same like house or whatever for more than 2 years, probably since the year 2000. It is now 2023. I am 33 years old. I had to think about it because my birthday is coming up in April. I'll be 34. fuck. 2022. What else happened in 2022? Democrats continued their campaign of working class genocide. There's the social production of the end of the pandemic. Things are bad here. Things are pretty bad here. Rents are skyrocketing. The cost of living is skyrocketing. The cost of healthcare is skyrocketing. I actually got a bunch of friends due to the aforementioned eviction. Got a bunch of friends who went on to get like real person adult jobs. So they went from being on Medicaid to being on employer insurance, and every single one of them hates the insurance that they're on compared to Medicaid. The closing down of SES, and there was the Rite Aid is a pharmacy chain that got bought by some fucking company, and as soon as they did that, they made sure that all Rite Aids could not take Medicaid anymore. So that's cool that a company can just sort of do that in this year that we live in. At the same time, actually today, Wizards of the Coast, this is a completely separate thing, Wizards of the Coast announced, or there was a leak of the new OGL, open game. I don't fuck with Wizards of the Coast. I don't care about D&D or Magic, but I know that they changed their rules for fanworks and who can monetize their stuff. And it's all very much like, oh ho ho, you peasants were out here in our worthless land building infrastructure that allowed you to mine it for resources. But we own this land, and now that you've put all this hard work into creating this amazing infrastructure just for you, we're going to kick you off that land and then take that infrastructure for ourselves and pretend that we're the ones who built it. Which is what every single corporation does to fandom. Sarah from A Future here. I just wanted to add that after quick and immediate and insurmountable backlash over the open gaming license that was leaked by somebody at Wizards of the Coast, they have since completely reversed course on this and released their gaming license into the public domain, I believe. Basically, they completely reversed course on closing up the environment for creating D&D expansions. It's nice to know that a company as bad as Wizards of the Coast can still be bullied into not fucking over its users. So that's nice. And here I am, a video essayist on the website youtube.com, and I am tasked with continuing to make video essays in 2023. This is a thing that everybody does, every YouTuber does, where they're like, hey, I'm exhausted and I'm burnt out. It's a little part of the reason why I haven't done one of these in a while is because I haven't been consistent enough in my output to really merit, like, oh, I'm gonna apologize for not having released a video in forever. Wow, you know, I'm so burnt out because I haven't been doing anything for 3 years. Got a bunch of stuff in the pipe. Everybody says this. Oh, I've got a bunch of stuff down in the pipe. You should be excited. It's just the same shit as everybody else. It's just I don't know what the point is. I don't care. I don't know who this is for anymore besides the people who comment on it. Like I put 4 or 5 months of work into my Tunic video. You know, I started that in March last year, and then I finally released it in October. In my opinion, that's the best essay I've done. It's sitting at 10,000 views right now, and it crossed that threshold, and then it just kind of stopped. I'm looking at that number, and I'm like, you know, that's better than a lot of channels, unfortunately, but you know, I do have like almost 30,000 subscribers. Where there's other 20? Where's the fucking algorithm? What I want to do is I want to do high quality stuff, but it's hard to do that at a pace that works with YouTube. I want to talk about why I haven't actually been doing anything in a while on this channel, why it's been so tough for me. A lot of it just comes down to the fact that around basically the end of 2019 and then into the pandemic, it shattered a lot of my optimism. And I think a lot of people's optimism, the way that the primary was run, whatever, it's ancient history now, it doesn't really matter. It wouldn't have worked anyway. But I had so much I wanted to say, but I can never justify saying it. I often struggle feeling like I don't have the right to have an opinion about a lot of things. I feel like I tend to assume that just about anything that I know is relatively common knowledge. So chances are if I act like some fact or thing or idea or connection is particularly remarkable, that they'll just sort of like laugh in my face like, well, yeah, of course, duh, obviously everybody knows that. That's an interesting sort of sociological conundrum there. Also, sorry, it's like midnight and I am a little bit high and I'm very tired. I haven't shaved. I look like shit, I know, but I've been looking at this video that I recorded and looking at other stuff that I've been doing and thinking about what I'm gesturing at and whatever the hell this is. I was angry. When the eviction happened, I was heartbroken. The way things went down with Homestuck, that broke my heart. I was so angry. I couldn't formulate anything substantive. Everything that I wrote, every criticism, everything, like just writing about movies, writing about anything, it always turned into me getting mad at somebody. And I didn't like that, but I couldn't stop it, and I didn't know how to fix it, how to not do that. Maybe a lot of it is that just I've been scared. I've been scared to talk about what I've been dealing with. Scared to talk about what I've been thinking about. The scale of the brokenness of this world is too big for anybody. It makes it that much harder to enjoy art. It makes it that much harder to like pretend to care about Marvel movies or whatever. And it makes even good, solid analysis of media feel frivolous. And that forces me to confront the notion that my entire career mindset, whatever it is that I've trained myself to be, has no foothold in this world anymore. I don't know why I feel the need to explain myself. Maybe I see this as a form of working through it, a form of expression. This is a quilt that my cousin made that belonged to my mom, that my cousin gave to my mom. I didn't realize how much of my family I put up on my walls. I have been thinking a lot about my mom and wishing I could talk to her about the world and about myself, wondering what she would think of me today. I think about my dad. I don't know. Oh God, I fear that he would have gone down the Q pipeline, so maybe we dodged a bullet there. It's very funny. My mom died right after Obama won in 2008, and my dad died right before Trump won in 2016. It feels sort of symbolic of the rabbit holes that they might have fallen down that would have led to their inevitable downfall anyway. Oh God, that's grim. I want to make art. I want to try things. I want to do something different, but I also want to have fun, and I don't want this to eat my entire life. I also want to write my stupid fucking Homestuck fan fiction that I love and that I kind of wish I could just devote all of my time to, but I also love this and I don't want to give it up, and I'm still trying to figure out how to balance these things. I like to be particular with my words. I like to make sure that my thoughts are clear. I spent a lot of time on the Tunic video because I wanted it to be concise and clear. I want to make more like it, but those things take time. Maybe I'll have an idea and have the energy to do something on it, but then I'm like, well, I'll do that later. And then I never do it. When did I lose my discipline? Was it just after graduating college, losing structure, not needing to have a day job anymore for a while there so I could just focus on this and then finally have sort of consistent free time to myself to figure out my gender, figure out my life after everybody that I knew disappeared from my life. Yeah, I kind of stopped expressing myself a little bit, maybe, because once I did the transitioning video, that was like the birth of me. And from that, that last section where all the books are sort of on their side in the background and it's very white and overexposed, symbolically that was, I starting from scratch, basically. I've just moved into this place. In the years since that video came out, I've changed a lot. I've learned a lot about myself and about the world. I feel like I'm only just starting to come into my own as a real human being. And there's still so much that I'm in doubt about. There's so much I don't know and that I'm afraid to ask about. I don't know. It's stressful. And finding a way to make criticism about the world when my perspective on it changes so much, and I don't know, it all adds up. Oh, cool, no one's here. It's perfect. So I'm here at the Seattle ferry terminal. You can see the water taxi somewhere behind me, back there. Yeah, I had some other stuff that I wanted to add to this video. I took some notes that I wanted to make sure that I hit, because this is a weird one. And the wind wasn't blowing when I started recording, and of course now it is. And now people are coming. Oh no, this is a nightmare. Now what do I do? I'm gonna have to find somewhere else to go, aren't I? I'm up here on this raised walkway. See the road down there. Alas, got these stairs here. They're blocked off. That Top Pot Donuts is closed. Oh my god, it's so noisy. Alright, well, we'll just call this that. Pa, that's my clap. So basically, I did my transition in video form and podcast form. It's good. I'm proud of the work that I did. Once the transitioning video came out, once the podcast reached a certain point, yeah, I kind of decided, or I didn't even really decide, it just sort of happened that I became comfortable in myself as a trans woman. I was sick of working my thoughts out in public, I guess. That's not the right way to put it. I don't know how to put it. I just needed time. I just needed time to myself. I became happy with who I was as a trans woman in public, as an artist. I feel like I truly instantiated myself as a human being. And then what? You know, I didn't want to keep making identitarian art. I don't know what the right word to use would be. There's only so much that you can transition in public. Eventually it just has to be your own thing, and I got sick of trying to find a way to fit all of my thoughts, all of my opinions into a thing that somebody could watch online, or read or listen to. I'm wearing an REI rain jacket because it's a little wet out here in Seattle. I know, it's weird, right? I got this on sale. I just want to make sure you know this. I got this. This probably sounds awful on this. You can tell a poor person because they always feel a reflexive need to justify anything that they own which has a signifier of being a luxury good. Like, oh, you know, I see people with like REI or North Face or any of those, any brand, really, any brand, like brand name clothing that was very clearly bought off the shelf. I see those people as existing on an entirely different planet as me. I kind of hate wearing this because I feel like people see it and they're like, oh, so you have money. Actually, one time I was walking around like way elsewhere downtown. There was a homeless guy on the stairway that was walking up who was brushing his teeth. And this guy that was next to me who was like wearing, you know, North Face jacket. We kind of connected about, oh, it's so difficult walking upstairs. I'm so winded. And then we got up to the stairs and like this homeless guy was brushing his teeth, and the guy next to me was like, hey man, are you sure this is really the best place for you to be doing that? And then he looked at me for validation, and I was so shocked by the gesture I couldn't think of anything to say at the moment, but what I really wanted to do was push him down the stairs. Homeless people, if you don't know, this is sort of a common misconception, don't have homes to go to brush their teeth. And Seattle is sort of at war with people who need to do anything outside of their homes. Like, say, for instance, go to the bathroom. Well, buddy, what do you want? You've got your North Face jacket. You've already won the culture war. Just shut up and move on. What did I write down on my list? I mentioned I had a list. Oh god, it's so wet and so crumpled. I think also part of why I haven't been doing stuff recently, as much stuff recently in the last few years during the pandemic, is, you know, the scale of human misery that we're talking about right now, just in general, is just too big. And I'm a media analyst, and I have very strong opinions as a communist, but at the end of the day, like, what am I going to do? I can get mad forever, and that doesn't solve anything. I can tell you, oh, go volunteer, go do this, go do that. Either you're going to do that or you're not going to do that. I don't think I'm going to be the person to push you over that ledge. It's sort of the Bob Dylan thing. There's nobody who's ever going to be converted by a song. Protest song is it doesn't mean anything. It's just for you coming down this way. No, nobody's coming down this way. This is a good spot. I want to turn the camera around to show you. This is a nice little globular alley here. I'm working on trying to figure out how to keep talking, and I think I've come closer. I've got ideas, but I second guess myself all the time. I feel like I have to justify my existence. I feel like I don't have a right to have an opinion. I assume that everything I say is common sense. And I have ADHD. It's medicated now, but it's been medicated intermittently throughout the pandemic. I've changed meds a couple of times. There's also just the fact that since I moved to Seattle, I started smoking weed, and I've smoked weed at least once a day, every day for the whole time that I've been here, basically. I've finally become the stoner that everybody accused me of being as I was growing up. I never smoked weed when I was a teenager. When I was in college, I was very straight edge, even though everybody thought I was a hippie. Everybody thought I was a stoner. People used to confuse me for Kevin Smith. People called me Kevin Smith when I was in high school. Dear God, help me. The thing is, I've been trying to smoke less weed because I can tell that it is making things worse for me. But then, oh, excuse me. Sorry. Oh, I hate being perceived. That's the other thing, is that I just hate being perceived. I hate it when people look at me. Of course, nobody is wearing masks because the pandemic's over. Nobody's wearing masks anymore because the pandemic is over. Nobody's wearing masks anymore because the pandemic is over. Nobody's wearing masks anymore because the fucking pandemic is over. Nobody's wearing masks anymore because the pandemic is over. Everybody knows the pandemic is over. Why wear a mask when the pandemic is over? Joseph Robinette Biden himself, the man, the myth, the legend, he even said it with his own mouth. Pandemic is over. Never wear a mask again, never care about another human being again. The pandemic is over and nothing matters. Just walked into a sea of human beings, like, not wearing masks, and just immediately spun around like, nope, I'm good. What if I stopped here? It seems like a great place to either record or get, grabbed by a cop. I'm out here by this barber shop now. I've got to go catch my train here in a minute, finish this up. What am I saying? Knowing what to do is one thing, and doing it is very much another. And that's always been the problem. And I stopped smoking weed for a while, and I feel good. I make it to the day, or I'm not going to smoke today. And then something crashes my mood, and I need to escape. I need to get away, because it's the only thing. I used to have panic attacks constantly, and I didn't know they were panic attacks until I started smoking weed, and I realized, oh, I feel way better most of the time now. Oh, I was having panic attacks all the fucking time. Wow. Okay, that's cool. Now I know that I just have a magical off button for my panic attacks called marijuana. At least I'm not drinking. At least I'm not smoking cigarettes. I don't know. Is that okay? I'm a perfectionist. I think, oh, this would be a great idea. This is a great idea for a video. I should do this. I'm going to do it tomorrow. So I write it down, and then tomorrow comes, and I'm like, oh, well. I'm sitting on the second part of my Halloween movies in December video. The rough cut has been done for a while. I just need to go through and do another quick pass, decide if I want to keep one section, maybe record some new stuff to add into it. And then every time I open it, I'm just like, oh, I want to die, actually. I think that I just want to die. I think I would just rather die than edit a video ever in my entire life. And then I edit, and then I feel good, and I like it. I don't know. I feel like I can't win because I have bipolar and I'm depressed. I'm medicated for my bipolar, at least. It's not as bad as it used to be, but it still ain't great. The world keeps getting worse, and things keep happening. And it's just harder and harder to justify what I'm doing. And yet I still feel drawn to doing it anyway. I don't know what that's about. So I guess I'm just going to keep on doing it and hope that something comes of it. I hope something comes of this video. I guess we'll see. Seattle's a weird city. I've been thinking a lot about how platforms just sort of arbitrarily limit the possibilities of what you can do. Isn't it cool how YouTube can just sort of introduce a feature like Shorts, and they can just add this whole new thing? Oh, you can do phone videos now. You can do phone videos, but with the ones that post onto your feed now, they don't tell you how long they are. And they're all they're meant for phones. Why, if they're meant for phones, why put them on the desktop app? I don't use YouTube on my phone because I'm not a Zoomer. I'm not a fucking child. I use a computer, like a PC, sitting upright in front of a monitor like a goddamn adult. And YouTube is just like, oh, you want Shorts? You like TikTok, right? You're 34 years old. You like TikTok. I'm 33 years old. I said that already. Fuck, I'm dying in real time. Occasionally I'll click on subscriptions, but then I'll accidentally misclick on Shorts. And what I love about it is I'll accidentally click on Shorts, right? And then I immediately click back on subscriptions. Every single time, doesn't matter. It loads the subscriptions page, but it still plays the first short that loads up.
If you've got a civilization of wizards.
Great design, Google, one of the most financially successful corporations in human history. Wow, great, good job. You just sort of do it. I've been wanting to change my methodology as a critic because I have found that a lot of the lenses of the Tumblr era, of the era that I grew up in, sort of just don't really work for me anymore. Like a feminist lens, a queer theory lens, there's a lot of stuff to be brought in there. There's insight to be brought in, but all of those lenses sort of leave out class and material conditions, which are kind of important. Identity isn't enough. It's important. It's important to understand. It's important to think about. It's certainly important. I shouldn't turn the mic away from my mouth when I'm talking. It's certainly important to take into account. As a trans woman, obviously, I think that my transness intersects quite a bit with a lot of other elements of my existence. But I find that pretty consistently, the thing that has gotten in my way has not been my transness or my closeted transness, but has been, in fact, my lack of money. And the fact that I'm fucking broke and poor and working class. And instead of spending my 20s schmoozing and making connections, I spent my 20s working various dead-end jobs. And then I became a YouTuber. And that didn't work out until it did. And then it kind of didn't anymore. And now here I am, and I'm still doing it. And I guess I'm just going to ride this wave until it crashes, which is sort of the boat that all YouTubers are in. I've actually felt a lot more sane this year because Jack Saint has been posting about this. Big Joel has been posting about this. Everybody's sort of in this same mode of like, we're kind of in an existential crisis for video essayists, and we need to figure some stuff out there. And that makes me feel better because, to see people who were active when I first started, who kind of helped inspire me to get into this in the first place, to see them echoing a lot of the same feelings that I have right now about the state of the world, makes me feel a little bit better. But anyway, there's this other YouTuber that I've discovered fairly recently named Gamman, who does what I would call materialist media analysis. And this is the sort of thing that I've been searching for, a way of analyzing media that takes into account the material conditions of its production and which has very clear eyes about like how important art really is. And I think we very much overestimate the importance of art in the world and in our lives and in the history of the politics of our countries that we live in. Because at this exact moment in history, art is basically the only thing that we can interact with or affect. And even that's starting to go away. Oh, hold on. I'm getting a little sweaty. Hold on. Human beings often disagree about many things. I recorded a video last year about Shang-Chi and The Legend of the Ten Rings. But the problem that I always run into when talking about Marvel movies is that they're not good, they suck to look at, and talking about them is a waste of time. The reason it's a waste of time to talk about any given Disney movie, really, is because Disney cares about each individual one of its feature films about as much as any given crypto guy gives a shit about any NFT. Marvel movies do not exist as artistic statements on anything. They exist for one reason and one reason only, and that is to sell you Disney products. A lot of my frustration with the conversations about Marvel movies where we say, oh, the CGI is bad, if you just limit the scope of that conversation to the picture, and you say, oh, well, the CGI is bad, and that's why the movie is bad. Like, maybe it looks like shit because the CGI is bad, but why is the CGI bad? In order to answer that question, you have to look beyond the borders of the film itself, the final art product, and look at the material conditions of its production and understand how this thing was made. I am enamored with the video essay, and I've been studying it and been interested in it since before video essay was a thing that existed on YouTube, really. I have notebooks that I was imagining videos that were very much of a lot of the form that I like best in video essays, as far back as like 2005, 2006. But I do find that they can sometimes be a little bit frivolous. I do find that sometimes they can lack confidence. I guess what really gets to me is that sometimes video essays feel as though the person talking believes that they have no right to have an opinion, which is true. I often struggle feeling like I don't have the right to have an opinion. I feel like I don't have a right to have an opinion. I assume that everything I say is common sense. You know, you'll get a lot of asides that are like, now I know that you're probably already writing a comment in the comments saying, well, but Sarah, why aren't you doing this? Or why are you saying that? Or what, blah, blah, blah. And I'm here to tell you that if you just keep watching this YouTube video, that I will respond to your comment before you even write it. So don't write it. And I get that that's a defense mechanism. That's a way of covering your ass beforehand. And I absolutely get that. What's up, everybody? My name is Matt Pat, and you're watching Game Theory. I think a lot of essayists lean a little bit too hard on a handful of little shorthands and tropes and things like the thing that I just mentioned of overly preempting criticism before the video is even out. And as I said, it's a coping mechanism. I understand where it comes from, and it's one that I am guilty of as well. It seems to be the case that a number of video essayists like myself are people who went to college, maybe went to film school, or at least went through an English program or something, and felt like, oh yeah, this is what I want to do, but then by graduation had found that there really wasn't a place for them. In college, I really loved learning about film and watching film and talking about film with other students and with my professors, and I loved making movies, I loved working on movies, but the problem with college is that once you've graduated as an undergrad, you're then tasked with, if you want to be a professor, like I kind of did, you have to then go to grad school, and if you want to be like a real adult professor, you need to get a PhD. And those are things that require a lot of work, a lot of time. And talking to my professors about this, when I was considering grad school, I talked to them a lot about their experiences and their debts, and asked them very honest questions about how they felt about going through the grad student PhD pipeline to become a professor. And their perspective on it was very bleak. It seems as though they require a level of hyper-specialization. What I was told was that you need to be like the Japanese cinema of the 70s guy, or the queer film person. And that's cool and all, but I've never really been a devote my life to one particular topic of study type thing. Like I can't imagine keeping up my enthusiasm for the medium if I consistently, with a gun to my head basically, had to come back to the same sort of limited pool of examples and study them ad nauseum for months and years on end. I feel like that's a great way to kind of come to hate film. And you know, that's just me. I'm somebody who likes generalities. I like taking a broad perspective on the entire field of human experience and artistic expression, which is a very pretentious way of putting the fact that I just like a lot of things. I choose not to see that as a weakness, because I think that there is as much a place for that as there is for specialization. And what I try to do is make novel connections between subject matter. I think for a lot of video essayists, there is this feeling like, well, I don't want people to call me a no fun sort of grump. I don't want people to think that I'm full of myself or that I'm pretentious. I want them to know that no, I don't actually take it that seriously. Hoo hoo hee hee ha ha. I've always been a very opinionated person, even when I was a teen, even when I was a kid, but I didn't have the language that I have now. I didn't have my understanding of other people that I have now. And often I would get called a critic. I always resented being called a critic. I always resented the intimation of being a critic because to my mind at the time, being a critic meant telling people what is good and what is bad. And I just didn't understand that. I never have felt that way about art. I don't like putting things in terms of this is what's good, this is what's bad. There is stuff that is sort of inarguably bad, and there is stuff that is maybe inarguably good, but most of the art is kind of in the middle. And even the stuff that is inarguable can be argued because we're human beings and we're good at just sort of inventing arguments out of nothing. Opinions, whether you disclaim them or not, whether you're like, I know that other people love this thing, but I have some issues, or, I don't want to rain on anybody's parade, but there's no amount of qualifying that you can do that will ever satisfy everybody. You cannot preempt everybody's criticisms. You can't control how people react to your work, no matter how hard you try. So to an extent, it's kind of a waste of time to try. Like, obviously you want to communicate your ideas clearly, but you have to communicate them with the confidence of the knowledge that you personally are invested in this opinion. You personally feel this way. And it's not a universal truth. It's not some sort of magic dictate handed down from heaven. And as such, if somebody disagrees with you, the only response to that is, yeah, cool. For me, I find it's valuable to look at the comments and kind of sift through them and figure out what's worth paying attention to and what's not worth paying attention to. We all have our own examples of creators who we once admired, who through one form or another ended up canceled or bowed out of the public sphere, who have kind of cemented themselves in our heads as like, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to make that mistake. I'm going to do something different. So I understand the desire to walk around landmines, or at least point out that you have noticed the landmines. But I think this impulse can detract from the quality of the overall work because you end up talking about the opinion more than you actually end up conveying the opinion. And the criticism is the thing that we're all here for. What you have to say about media is what we're all here for. I'm not doing a cancel culture thing, but I do think that in a general sense, culturally, we don't leave a lot of room for people to be wrong and to learn from their mistakes. I have videos up on my channel that go back to, I think, 2014. And let me tell you, I just about disagree with every single opinion that I've put on this channel since 2019. And there's even some videos that I don't agree with. My Glass Onion video that I actually released, I know I talked about it earlier in this video as being unfinished. It's finished now. It's out. Did I talk about it? Or I talked about my Halloween videos? Oh boy, I recorded the first part of this video a while ago. My Glass Onion video, I basically disagree with everything that I said in that video. I flip-flopped so many times, and I'm not really happy with it. I don't really agree with my opinions, and I think a lot of the comments on it are right. But my overall criticism still stands, that I think it's not as strong a movie as Knives Out, and ultimately, that's a feeling. It's a feeling that I have, and I'm trying to articulate it. And I don't think I did a great job necessarily of eloquently articulating it. And now it's out, and people can agree or they can disagree, and it's not really any skin off my back until they start coming for my ass. And that's kind of the problem, is that it's easy to say, just say shit and grow and learn and change. Just sometimes you wind up on the wrong side of the wrong people, and suddenly you've become a pole star of some political culture war shit that you just don't really want any part of, and you just kind of have to deal with it. But so, as I said, a lot of other video essayists are in a moment of kind of crisis or self-reflection about the work of being a YouTuber and the work of making video essays. And I'm going to take a step back from my own personal kind of perspective on all of this, and I want to broaden this discussion to a handful of other creators. So first of all, I'm going to show this lengthy clip of from one of Caleb Gamman's cybergunk videos. I highly recommend pretty much everything on his channel. I'm playing a lengthy clip because I think it's very good, and because I think that this does a pretty good job of selling him as a critic and what makes him so interesting to me. Basically, what I want you to pay attention to is how Gamman makes his cultural commentary inextricable from an economic commentary and as well a historical commentary. How all of it is sort of wrapped up into the same package. Just as a note, I've cut a lot of little bitty sections and kind of assembled it into a pithy thing. So if you watch the actual video, things might happen in a slightly different order. I think it's all relatively the same order that I've cut this in, but anyway.
A lot of people have some sort of social media-based creative side hustle that they would love to metabolize into an income source. And the tech companies agree. They say, now is a better time than ever for creators. Anyone can create, everyone has the tools, anyone can build a fan base of thousands. You don't need a label or a studio, a publisher or a distributor. The old gatekeepers are gone, you can do it yourself. Which is all very true. The only thing they failed to mention is that you cannot make a living doing that, and there is no alternative. And to make stuff that people would like, it takes time, right? You need training and practice, and you don't get paid for that. So you're going to have to live kind of poorly for a while. And then actually making something good takes more time than you'd think. You can make content that's good and valuable to hundreds of thousands of people and still not be making a living. What you can make a living from is branding. If you have enough social capital to sell merch or crowdfund or endorse products or appeal to what's left of traditional media and try and weasel your way in. But your work is still worthless because content has been devalued. YouTube, Twitch, TikTok all require daily content. You don't have to make something good, you just have to make something now. You have to make massive amounts of low effort content constantly, and who can even afford to attempt that, right? It's like quitting your job to become a full-time lottery ticket purchaser, but riskier. Now, the tech industry is built on this dominance business model. The less financially viable your business model is, the better. The more money you lose, the less anyone can compete with you. They make a platform, lose billions up front, scoop up all of the users by hemorrhaging money, so the consumers love it because they're getting great value, and no one can compete with you because you're losing money like a fuckwit, and then they think they'll lower their costs, jack up the prices, and because the users will have nowhere else left to go, they'll be the last man standing, and they'll switch from losing money to making a lot of money. So Spotify loses $2.5 million every day, Netflix is $14 billion in debt, and doing this isn't quite as problem-free as you might imagine. As I've mentioned before, it puts them in the business of ensuring a cultural and technological stagnation, and here they're sort of directly devaluing content. Like, the idea is that, yes, this system is exploitative now, it is devaluing content now, but eventually they will have to make money. Eventually it'll level out. At some point they'll have to turn a profit. Now, Netflix, the first time that Netflix ever made money was at the start of the coronavirus. They had to stop production, they had to stop spending, but their subscription count kept ticking up. So they decided they could do it. Now was the time to pivot to being profitable. So they're spending less, they're producing less, and coincidentally, for the first time ever, they've lost subscribers. Instead of eventually leveling out, what really happens is these companies tank the industry that they're in and then die out. They've been throwing money at the wall trying to ruin their competition, but what's actually happened is their competition has changed. They're now competing against loss leaders for companies that are bigger than them. Companies that don't care if they're losing money on streaming because it's promotion for their brand. Netflix or Spotify aren't gonna beat Amazon or Apple. They've just driven culture into the ground for no fucking reason at all. But at least the tech platforms aren't the only option. There's still traditional media. Dying traditional media, where it's standard to do multiple unpaid internships. The basic logic there is it's easier to turn a profit if you use slave labor. People who don't have a mass of generational wealth find these internships exploitative and difficult, and they're often unable to support themselves through it, so they have to leave the creative industries entirely. Conversely, people who do have a lot of their parents' money find these to be empowering creative opportunities which pay off big time. You can no longer make money from making stuff, so you have to have money to throw it away, which means no one can afford to create, while rich kids become New York improv comedians. So now, instead of actual art made by actual artists, you get to see kind of okay content made by your kind of internet friends. Maybe part of that is the literal arts funding slipping away and being given to large companies instead of being used to kickstart a new generation. The British were a bit of a cultural juggernaut in the 60s, partly because of their generous arts funding, but also their generous welfare state. Essentially, every British band you could name that started before the 90s started out on welfare. Because artists need time and training to get good and time to make stuff, and while that's happening, they just need to sort of subsist for a while. They don't necessarily need to live well, but they do need to live. Then, over time, the British gradually stopped funding their arts and humanities, but basically the artists were still able to support themselves, but because the funding for their content had dried up, they had to make content with lower overheads. Then, at the start of the noughties, they drastically changed their welfare system from supporting people out of work to pushing people into work. Yeah, we live in a world where anyone can download FL Studio. Cameras are cheaper than ever. Everyone can create a fan base of thousands from their bedroom. But for a creative to make a living, it's less attainable than ever. If you want to do anything creative, it's whoever can sustain the losses for the longest wins. So this doesn't create anything worthwhile, it just breeds stagnation. Maybe it's controversial, but I believe that everyone deserves a roof over their head and food, no matter if their work is completely useless to society or if they're making art.
So this, I think, does a great job of setting up the economic conditions that we find ourselves in now. This sort of is a macroscopic economic view of the tensions at play in the hearts and minds of anybody who has a Patreon or a Ko-fi or a PayPal or just generally relies upon or significantly supplements their income with donations from strangers on the internet. Finding Gamman's stuff for me was really gratifying, specifically because he is talking about these things in such clear, confident, and concise terms, and not really afraid of being disagreed with, because they're spoken with the confidence of a materialist who does have a pretty strong grasp on how things work in the world. And I think that that is very important. And what I like is that it implies a methodology that leads one to understand the context of something in culture and in history beyond simply what we see. Anyway, so I want to shift gears now to some more subjective perspectives on being a bread tuber, on being a left tuber, or whatever. So now we're going to jump into some clips from Jack Saint's video about escaping breadtube, from his recent road trip series.
There's always going to be this chicken and the egg situation when it comes to these micro-cultural trend situations, like with something like BreadTube. I don't think it was quite the YouTubers spontaneously appeared and then all of a sudden there was an audience for it. And at the same time, I don't think it's just like the audience demanded it and so those YouTubers appeared. There were obvious direct consequences to the fact that it wasn't any kind of organized movement of any particular ideology, namely what I consider to be the pro-thing, anti-thing split. A lot of early BreadTube content is debunking. It's responses to far-right or just generally conservative creators or pundits, more to break down their way of thinking rather than to propose any kind of new way of thinking necessarily. But it was more based around that response. Again, like the being an anti-thing type content creator. And that led to the perception, I think, for a long time that BreadTube was like a de-radicalizing community, right? The main purpose of BreadTube was to take people that were going to become, political radicals and bring them down a notch, which was somewhat of at odds with the pro thing side that kind of wanted a little bit more of the radical. I guess, long story short, when you have this kind of like micro cultural fervor around something named after an anarchist book, and the popular perception of it is that it's a de-radicalizing space, you're going to end up with some conflict. I think it was this issue of the sort of pro-thing, anti-thing split that really led to the collapse of the whole BreadTube enterprise. And obviously I'm saying that despite the fact that there are channels that still exist and are doing well and are making great videos in either direction. But it's the fact that there are these clear directions that were taken when things started to feel like they were sort of disintegrating. And obviously you can be like, is there an inherent reason for this weird sort of divide that has been created? Can you not make content that is both pro, new thing and against the old thing? Yes, you definitely can, but people still have this desire to slot you in one of the two anyway. It's always going to be somewhat silly and maybe to some extent frivolous, but I'm genuinely trying to use YouTube as a platform to express an idea in a way that people may not usually pick up on, which I think is really at the heart of it what most breadtubers from my experience were doing. It is in this uncomfortable middle ground between a kind of entertainment piece, a kind of political diatribe, something forward but also very much within what's currently acceptable in terms of like media and content. Like it's not quite revolutionary content in a certain kind of way, but I think that weird middle ground is kind of what BreadTube always was. And when you see this fragmentation because of these differences, I think that's when you stop really having a space.
The specific thing that I want to call attention to from this Jack Saint clip is his mention of BreadTube not being a concerted ideological movement, but just sort of a random collection of people who happened to be categorized by an audience as existing in the same sort of sphere. This is really the background to why I am looking for a more coherent and specific methodology. Everybody is kind of coming back. A lot of YouTubers ended up taking breaks, whether intentionally or unintentionally, through the pandemic. And a lot of us are sort of coming back, trying to put the pieces back together. And I think one of the big things that's on everybody's mind is we don't want to make the same mistake again of sort of putting all of us, everybody who makes video essays that are just sort of a little bit on the left side into the same categorical box. I want to associate myself with or collaborate with or be a part of a movement which has a coherent ideological and methodological underpinning. I don't want to just be, a group of people who are like, yeah, man, it's all vibes. To an extent, it is all vibes, but there is more to it than just that. Okay, anyway, now here is a Little Joel clip. Little Joel is Big Joel's side channel where he is posting much like 3 to 4 minute long videos.
What is the axe doing here exactly? Is it cutting down the woods we're in? These cages, dead metal trees in a dark room? Will this space be destroyed soon? Or does the axe precede this piece of art? Woods were chopped down and all we have left now is dead leaves and the memory of chopping. You think about the name of this piece, reconstruction. Is this what reconstructing something means? Killing a forest and arranging it in an order we can understand and failing and being left here in this strange room? Sometimes I feel a bit ashamed of these Little Joel videos. Not for any real reason, really. I enjoy making the videos, but I have this feeling every time I make one that I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm good at making these videos, I think. They are more what they are supposed to be than anything on Big Joel has been recently, and that's especially true because for the last 3 months, everything I've made there has been difficult to understand and messy. I have so many comments on my last video telling me they just didn't get it. I agree with them. I don't totally get the video either. Little Joel is something that people can just enjoy, and I enjoy it too. And more, I wonder what the real channel is actually here for. I often think about taking some time off to make videos, not because I've burnt out or don't like making the videos, but because I don't think I'm a good enough writer to accomplish what I want to. At least, not yet. And that's a confusing problem to have, because what I want is to make work that doesn't answer for itself. Videos that don't simply try to reconstruct their subjects, that don't try to chop down a forest and give us cages filled with dead leaves.
It's probably pretty obvious why this clip resonates with me. I also wonder about deconstruction and reconstruction and to what extent that is a harmful process, or what my responsibility as a critic is to the material that I am composting for whatever it is that I'm doing. There is an extent to which I'm doing that in this very video, where I've got, beyond just the clips that I've shown and the next one that I will show, which I've sort of butchered from longer, more coherent pieces, there's also the fact that this is now the fourth location that I've filmed at, trying to figure out what I want to say with this video. And each of those is sort of an improvisational clip that went from 30 minutes to an hour, from which I have cut, little bits and pieces to create the illusion of a coherent argument. I hope it's the illusion of a coherent argument. And that's that's this process. That's my process. I'm learning, I'm sort of relearning how to do video essays all over again. I've been feeling more of a recommitment to my early meta-modernist ideals, in the sense that I do feel a certain obligation towards not just deconstructing, but synthesizing. But okay, this last clip is from Hoots. This video is nominally a criticism of the sitcom Frasier, but it like a lot of these types of videos, it becomes about more than that. I am jumping here to the end, and it requires a little bit of context. One of the framing devices here, there are two people involved. There's Hoots, who's this is their channel, and then there is their collaborator for this, Neil of the Leftist Cooks, which is another channel whose stuff you should absolutely check out. But the sort of framing device of this video is that they've been looking for a title for the video, a sort of pithy summary of everything that is wrong with Frasier. And that kind of leads down a very emotional road. And that's kind of why I want to include it, because this is a much more deeply emotional perspective on this exact series of qualms and conundrums. I should say, immediately before this clip, Hoots had been discussing Kelsey Grammer's sex crimes, which shows that's hence the emotion.
I don't want to remember Frasier this way. It's still too nice. By coining the show a catchphrase that recognizes how the less comfortable aspects of it are swept under the proverbial rug, or under the proverbial Jack Russell Terrier on top of the proverbial $15,000 couch, we're still kind of participating in covering up those discomforting aspects. We're referring to the dog. Why don't we just call it There's Something About Maris, or The Show Fucking Hates Women? Why, in 2022, following a media spectacle masquerading as a trial that essentially sounded the death knell of Me Too, and multiple coordinated and pretty fucking successful political moves to control women and strip them of their rights, in the middle of an actual fucking genocide of trans people, are we still feeling so cozy about the media that made us like this? I don't want to come up with clever new tropes or make YouTube videos titled Frasier is garbage and here's why. I don't want to do much of anything these days. I'm just tired all the time. And this isn't fun anymore.
Have you ever heard the story of Lupe Velez?
I cut this next bit of bridging material for time, but basically Neil discusses the popular history of actress Lupe Velez. There is a very popular story about how she died, and then they discuss how she actually died, which is completely different from the lies that were made up by basically by racist white men. And then that exact story, the fake story, the lie, was reproduced completely uncritically in the very first episode of Frasier. So Neil has just recounted the fake story and the true story, and then...
Neil, I'm already upset. Why are you telling me this?
Because it's true. Because it's this woman's truth, and people like you and I have a responsibility to the truth. To look at the lies and the bullshit and the zero research and the bias and the misogyny and say, no, fuck off. Here's the truth. And that changes the narrative just a little. It doesn't fix patriarchy, but it sets the record straight. And we should be entertainers and tell the truth. No low-hanging fruit, no bullshit. Look, I'm just your friend. And I think you have every right to be angry. I'm Irish. I'm not going to make the bad feelings go away. We need the bad feelings. We need your anger. We need your conviction and energy and commitment to the truth. That's what people like you and I are. Part of the solution. It won't make you feel any better right now. But over the course of a lifetime, I mean, who do you want to be?
I don't know who I want to be, which is weird coming from a trans woman. I don't know who I am becoming. I went through this period of immense reinvention of myself, and then I lived in that self for a long time, but I had a really difficult time doing so satisfactorily because my life kept blowing up at least once a year, sometimes twice a year since 2019. Turns out 4 years of constant instability at a moment when you don't have a whole lot of friends because it turns out a lot of people in your life are a little bit transphobic before you came out, and you're looking for a purpose in life. You've just finally decided for the first time, maybe I don't want to commit suicide when I turn 30, actually. Turns out that's not necessarily great for one's productivity. And that's the problem, is that the only important fact, the only important thing is whether or not you're being productive. Are you getting enough done? Are you releasing enough content? Are you doing enough? And all of my best work is work that I spent time thinking about. I do think that we rush. We rush too much. And I do think that there is a race to the bottom in terms of quality for the reasons that Caleb Gamman described. But for as difficult as everything is and has been, I have been deeply heartened by just how common these feelings are. And it does seem to be the case that more and more people who lean further and further towards the center are coming to terms with the fact that the levers of power and the means by which we engage with culture and the way that culture is controlled by private corporations, and the way that our lives are controlled by people who don't even know that we exist on all levels, the way that our daily lives are full of toll roads. I think a lot of people are calling this moment into question, and I don't know what's going to come of it, but at least it'll be history. You ever think about how the algorithm is just a boss you can't mail anthrax to? The point is that I'm just going to try some stuff. I'm just going to try some things. I think I'm just going to try some things in 2023. I'm just going to try some things. I'm just going to fuck around and see what happens. I'm just going to fuck around and see what I can do. And I hope that you will come with me and tolerate whatever weird fucking flights of fancy. Let's pan down a little bit. Yeah. Cat loves food. Yeah. Oh. Now I bet this looks terrible. I bet this looks awful. Well, thank you all for watching whatever this YouTube video was.
Patrick Feeney, S&R Jackdaw, Emma Sylvia, Evan Ritchie, Bobby Jane DeForge, Pinball Witch, Natalie Watts, J Mac D, Ethiot, JB Seminary Wolf,
Bellicose.
Susie Minique,
Anarcho Duck, Draken Lupin,
Kylan Hoover, Anaphylaxis, Jane the Human,
Richard Dunbeck,
Quirk, Halsey, Optimistic Duelist, Zeeb, Dick Benigna, haven't even met her yet, Cam Chacon, Catherine Jibes, Robin, Rubeline, Scott Olson,
J. Jorts,
Chthonic Syzygies. What is this fucking accent?
Kate Shrike, Viscazone, The Girls!
And Apocalypse Arisen. So that's that. Thanks for coming with me on this fun little journey of ours. There's a goddamn bird over here.